I want to ask Derek to come up here. This is Derek Way, a man who knows a lot about microscopes, and because he is a PhD student in biology. Tell us, what do you study, Derek?
Hey everyone, I'm Derek.
It should be.
Okay, perfect.
There you go.
Yeah, so I'm a PhD student. I'm in my 6th year of study, and we study worms in our lab.
Worms?
Yes, worms. Yeah. Woo!
So these are not my favorite creatures. I like creatures with fur and nice things, but worms, not so much. Why do you like worms?
Yeah, worms are pretty awesome. Once you get to know them, you got to give them a chance. I didn't think I'd be studying worms, but you eventually come to realize how useful they are and how similar they are to humans. They've got a lot of things in common.
Really?
They do? Yeah.
This is news. So tell us. So what is this up here? It looks like different microscopes and different things. What have you got?
Yeah, when you were talking about the sermon series, I went around and took a bunch of photos of stuff in our lab. So on the top left there and the top right are 2 different microscopes that we use in our lab, just kind of showing the scale of microscopes. The top left is a really simple one, very easy to use, and then the top right one, you've got lasers and things on it, and it's much more expensive and nicer.
Wow.
So it's just 2 different examples of microscopes that we've got. And then the worms, of course, I couldn't not show the worms. Yeah. But everyone thinks of like earthworms when I say worms, but there's lots of different kinds of worms. And so these are nematodes. And so I circled in red a fully grown adult in the bottom left there. So it's, a millimeter long, very tiny. And then if you zoom up on it under a microscope, you can see all the beautiful anatomy of the worm. It's very
now,
awesome.
Hang on here. So I have trouble with the worms that I can see.
Oh, yeah.
You're saying there are worms I cannot see?
Oh, yeah, everywhere, all over.
Everywhere?
They'll get you. No, just kidding. They won't. Some will, but these ones won't.
This is not the encouraging morning that I wanted to have. So that's really small,
yes.
that worm.
Yeah.
So you have to blow it up to see it. You have to magnify it.
Yeah.
What's the magnification there in that lower right-hand corner?
Oh, geez. That I didn't take that photo. That's from the internet. It's just so nice. I couldn't compete.
Yeah. Well.
But yeah, that is. Oh, geez. I don't know. That's like on a compound microscope, probably with like a 40x.
Okay.
magnification.
So 40 times the size.
Yeah, probably, or maybe a little bit more than that.
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
So you said these worms here, they matter. Why?
They matter?
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
What they're so small.
Yeah.
They can't matter that much.
Oh, geez. These worms are awesome. They've got so much research in them. They've shown us so much about the biology of humans. A lot of science has been done on them. A lot of neurobiology, for example. They contain a lot of the same genes and proteins in their neurosystem as we have. So you can do experiments with these and really figure out, how are all these different mechanisms interplaying with each other, and
wow,
it's very cool stuff.
So you've got another slide here. What is this?
Yeah, so this is just an example of what you can do with a microscope and how beautiful the world really is. So this is a flower from Trader Joe's or somewhere. I don't know what flower it is, but okay. I just decided to look at it one day. And so you can look at these different magnifications and zoom in. So that red circle is where we're looking, and you can just zoom in more and more and see the individual pollen grains shown here. It's just very beautiful. You can just take these things and look at it.
Yeah, so that's really small. How big is that flower, do you think?
Oh yeah, that black scale bar right there is 1 inch.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're really zooming in there. And
so this is really small stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to zoom it up in order to see it. But here again, the same question. That can't be very important. It's so small.
Oh yeah. Yeah, well, you can make different arguments for what's important and what's not important, but for things like this, one general thing is it shows the magnificence and beauty of the world.
Well,
but then,
that.
Of course,
yeah.
People studying these things, this affects things like agriculture, the crops that we grow and things that feed the whole world. So research on these really small levels really affect these really big questions and problems.
So understanding human beings you got to go really small.
Yeah.
And understanding crops and agriculture and all sorts of stuff, you got to go really small to understand this stuff. And that's why we have microscopes, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
Derek, you're a good sport. Thank you for putting up with me this morning. And thank you for all that you and Sophie do for us, aside from educating me about worms. Why do we talk about this? Because I just learned that there's stuff I can't see that affects my life. And that's in the physical world. God made the physical world. It is a wondrous thing. He also made a moral and spiritual dimension to the world. He made the world of right and wrong. And there are things happening in that world that I can't see unless I really zoom in. There's a passage of Scripture that's going to be read for us here in a moment, Proverbs chapter 1, the first 7 verses. It's a purpose statement for the book of Proverbs. Why was this book written? And here's what it says: to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight. So it's basically saying here that Proverbs was written to function like a microscope. Proverbs gives you lots and lots of small things to look at, and you can magnify those things and make them larger and understand them better. And when you do, you're looking at wisdom. You're looking at things that affect your life that you can't see. Heidi, come on up here. What is this contraption here that it's very colorful? What are we looking at here?
So in Kingdom Kids, we've been talking about wisdom in the Proverbs and all the different aspects that make up wisdom. But in isolation, they don't do a whole lot together. There's some way to integrate these pieces together.
Okay, so we've got a lot of pieces here. What I see labels on them. After the service, you can come up and look at this. What are these pieces kind of symbolizing?
So the pieces are supposed to symbolize the different aspects of wisdom. So there's one that says prayer, there's one that says trusting the Lord, there's listening, patience, and then there's some blank ones that still need to be filled in.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
a lot
yeah.
to learn.
So there are a lot of pieces to the Christian life. There are a lot of pieces to wisdom. Somehow they need to all work together. Wisdom has a lot of parts to it. We just said it, Proverbs is a kind of microscope. It'll show you lots of small situations. But the purpose of looking at the book of Proverbs and meditating on all of these little situations is to get a sense, one step at a time, of the whole, how they all work together. What is wisdom? When you look at it up close, you realize it is a whole. It is integrated. It is like this contraption here. You can take all of these pieces and put them in there, but together they create a larger whole. And when that whole is working right, then everything, all the gears move together. If you take out some of these pieces, or if you add too many pieces, it doesn't work so well. God's wisdom is an integrated whole. It was not meant to be chopped up in pieces. It was meant to be received as a whole. And so it's like this contraption here. It's kind of complicated, but God is big. He is great, as we've been singing about. And his greatness is expressed in how he made the world. So wisdom, first of all, is a whole. It is not a bunch of parts that you can kind of select. And I would, on a next description of wisdom, is it is living. One problem with this contraption is it's not alive. Derek's worms are alive. And they are organisms that have parts, and those parts take in nourishment and they digest food. And am I right? Do they eat food? Okay. Bacteria. That sounds like a good thing, eating bacteria. All right. Even worms. So they are organisms, they are alive. We are organisms. Our bodies have lots of parts that all work together. There is not just a physical organism, a collection of organisms at work in the universe. There is a moral organism, a spiritual organism, a life operating in our world. And that is called wisdom. Now, the minute we say that, the minute we say wisdom is alive, we're saying something very important. We're saying it's not just information. It's not just learning something and knowing it and applying it rightly. We're saying that we need to get in touch with how life works. And in order to do that, we have to look at it closely. So let's take a look at some of these phrases here in Proverbs 1 that Josiah and Miranda read for us. I'm looking at verse 3. The purpose of the book of Proverbs is to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity. That's kind of interesting. It's to receive instruction in things that you do out in the marketplace, in things that you do at school, in things you do with your friends. It is to receive instruction about your life with others. We tend to think of wisdom as my thing. It's something that I have in my head, and then I use it. But in Proverbs, wisdom is a shared thing. It's something we all build together. And so if you look at these words, righteousness. So you go out into the marketplace and you behave righteously toward the people you're working with. You do good work, you do honest work, you at school in your academic work, you do straight, honest experiments. You turn in your work, not somebody else's work. You do all of these things as a way of participating in life with other people. So God's wisdom is an integrated whole. It's like this gadget here, except it's alive. And wisdom makes its own decisions. It's operating out there in the world. Here's another one, another way to describe wisdom. Wisdom is authoritative. Wisdom is in charge. Wisdom, when it makes decisions, it runs the world. It decides how to deal with people when they do unrighteous things. It decides how to instruct those of us who are simple and trying to learn these things. It decides how to encourage those who are simple and discouraged, making mistakes, repeatedly doing the wrong things. Wisdom has ways to encourage those folks as well. And we are all in one of these places at one time or another. Wisdom is in charge. So we could put it this way. If you look at verse 5 in Proverbs 1, you see that the wise people are not in charge. Wisdom is in charge. Here's verse 5. Let the wise hear. Hear what? The book of Proverbs. Let the wise, those people who are learning life and God's way of righteousness, let them hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. You know what this is saying? You're never wise enough. You're always learning. The wise on earth are the people who are learning. So they're not in charge. Wisdom is in charge. They're just seeking wisdom. So here's a final way to think about wisdom in the book of Proverbs as we look at it up close, and when we really drill down on how deep God's involvement with this world is, we realize that his wisdom is worthy of our adoration. It's worthy of our reverent fear. You know, when I heard about those microscopic worms, I got a little afraid. I didn't really know what to do with that information. It opened up a whole new set of possibilities to me. The possibility that I am filled with worms, and I don't even know it. Am I full of worms? Okay, he's messing with my head, and it's freaking me out, Derek. So I learned all of this stuff, and reality all of a sudden gets a lot bigger than I thought it was. I thought it was just the worms you could see, and now it's a lot bigger than that. Wisdom is worthy of our reverent fear. That moment when we say, oh, this is a lot more complicated than I thought it was. You know what that moment is? It's the beginning of wisdom. It's recognizing the Lord just showed me something about my life and what I'm doing, how I'm messing it up, how I can get back on track, and how far I have to go. And in learning that, I am amazed. And I am a little bit more attentive and reverently awestruck by who God is. Healthy. It's good. It stands us up. It gives us strength. So what we're going to look at here in the next several weeks is how wisdom behaves as an organism. How does it function? Does it have behaviors? Does it have patterns? And how does it work? If you want to know answers to those things, come back next week. Let's see. Do we have another song between these 2 points?
Public apology. I threw you under the bus. I was the one who messed up the schedule.
So I was right.
You were right. I was wrong.
So we've already prayed. Okay. So I guess what I do is I keep talking, which I'm best at. Let's change the slide here. Couple of tests. The great thing about going into a laboratory and looking at something closely is that once you learn about it, you can actually do some tests to find out whether you're doing things right or doing things wrong. I would like to give you a couple of questions to test where you are in relation to wisdom. But before we do that, I want to ask Heidi about this thing here. We've got another set of things up here. This looks like a plastic bottle here is full of shells and...
It is. You want to tell us what else is in there, Flora?
There's some sponges and I think there's some dirt maybe, or
Some sand.
some sand, yeah.
Sand?
Yeah.
Sponges?
Yes.
Why are those in there?
So we thought we could use our knowledge about filters to pour some dirty water through this homemade filter to clean it up a little bit.
So we've got dirty water. Where is that? Oh, it's right down there.
It's right here.
Ooh. I got to be honest, that looks terrible.
It does.
So, it's probably, there's worms in that. We got to get rid of that.
Should we see if we can filter it out a little bit with our device?
Yeah, so, let's see if we can get rid of this terrible water here. Yee. It's chunky bad. What did you put in that water?
We put dirt from our chickens' dust bath.
This is dirt from the chickens.
We got charcoal from our fire and we get dirt and grass.
Dirt and grass associated with chickens. So here's the idea. The water is going through this kind of natural filter here.
There might be a few feathers in there too from a chicken.
There might be feathers? Wow. I'm not sure those will help. Okay, so Heidi, what's supposed to happen here?
So I can see that it's filtering out a lot of the big chunks, but I'm not so sure about the microbes and things that are down at the bottom. And there's still some color to the water.
Color is an interesting way to describe this. Yeah, it's a little beige. Let's put it that way. What do you think, Flora? Once this is all filtered, how about you take a big drink of that water? No. No? But it's gone through the filter. Why don't you want to drink it?
There's probably still worms in it.
There's still worms in it. So do we have any pure water here?
We do. We have this jar right over here.
Lift that up, Flora. There we go. That looks like the stuff that I recognize that we should drink. Would you take a drink of that?
Yeah.
You would. So would I. So that's good stuff. Thank you for doing this. We're going to let this filter here. A filter is a way to choose. You can select things by a filter. This filter is trying to select the water and make the water pure. We don't think it's going to succeed. In fact, I am certain that it has failed. It has selected some things, bad stuff, to pull out, but it hasn't selected enough. The filter's no good. What we're saying here is wisdom is a whole. It's a living thing. It comes directly from God. It's His life. He's in charge. And so when we take our lives and we try to run our lives through a filter saying, we'll make it wise, there are things that we can choose that will fix our lives. And we can, as one of the pieces you read off in the video was good choices. We can make good choices and fix this, and then we'll be pure. And the answer is, no, you won't. We don't choose wise things. We receive wisdom as a whole from God. It's either our lives trying to filter out the junk, or it's God's purity. And there's only one way to get the real deal, the wisdom of God. It is to say, I don't have it. I am not wise. I need it. Lord, would you give me wisdom? I'm looking at my life under a microscope, and it doesn't look good. So I need your wisdom to come into my life. Now, who are you talking to when you ask God for wisdom like that and you confess, I don't have wisdom? You're talking to Jesus. Remember, the foundation of wisdom from that video is not, in fact, pretzels, although that's a very good possibility. The foundation of wisdom is Jesus, because Jesus is wisdom come to earth. And he gives us his life, his heart, his mind in the person of the Holy Spirit. Somebody said that when they were asked in the video, what is wisdom? Somebody said the Holy Spirit, and she was right. So Jesus gives us this pure wisdom as a replacement for ours. But there's an attitude that gets us back to these fundamental things with Jesus. There's two questions you can ask to really determine, am I at that place of humility? Here's the first question. Am I seeking knowledge of God, or am I seeking permission from God? A lot of times people open their Bibles and start reading them looking for permission to do things they have already decided to do. Not wise. That's just a filter trying to operate on your life and saying, okay, if I make a good choice here, I can kind of balance out the bad choices over here and it'll all be fine. No, it won't be fine. It's going through the filter here and it's coming out still pretty muddy. So this question takes you to your heart attitude toward God. Is it an attitude of receiving wisdom, or is it an attitude of saying, God, you got some good ideas there. I think I'll take that one, and that one, but all the rest of them, we'll just wait on that. No, that's not the attitude of the fear of the Lord, that reverent awe that is the beginning of wisdom. Second question. Am I bending to wisdom, or am I trying to bend wisdom to me? This is really the key. It's just another way of asking the earlier question. Wisdom does not accommodate us. Wisdom, the moral structure of our world, is what it is. It's moving along regardless of what we choose. And the only thing that we can do is say to God, I need to adapt to you. I've got to stop trying adapting you to me. Once we make that shift, once you start seeking that level of wisdom, you have made the decisive change in your life. You have decided God is alive around me, in my life, and through me, and I am going to adapt and change to Him. I'm going to stop trying to change Him into me. That is the fundamental change that switches us from folly to the road to wisdom.